President, please be seated. The court is now in session. And now the floor is given, before the floor is given to the co-prosecutors to resume the questioning, the Chamber would like to issue a ruling on two requests. Number one, the request of OCP in relation to Kong Samon, previously acting as the duty counsel. On 18 April 2016, the OCP submitted a request that Kong Samon used to be the duty counsel for 2 TCW 898, 2 TCW 3931, 2 TCW 906, and 2 TCW 816. After hearing these oral arguments of parties on 19 April 2016, the Chamber rejects the request of OCP in relation to seek a written waiver from Khieu Samphan. B, recommends that International Council Anti-Gise examine witnesses through TCW 898, 2 TCW 931, 2 TCW 906, and 2 TCW 816, and reiterates that National Counsel Kong Samon is bound by his obligations of confidentiality. Reasons for this decision will be issued in due course. In relation to the second ruling on internal Rule 29 protective measure for 2 TCW 865, the Chamber notes that 2 TCW 865 was granted a protective measure during case 001 document A135 pursuant to internal Rule 29. On 19 April 2016, WESU provided the Chamber with an updated risk assessment report in relation to 2 TCW 865 and recommended that a number of protective measures be put in place during his testimony. Noting the requirements of internal Rule 29 and the provisions of the Article 4 of the Practice Direction on Protective Measures, ECCC/03/2007/revision 1, the Chamber decides to order the following protective measures. The image and voice of the witness not be made available to the public. Number two, information relating to the contact details, family details, including the name of spouse and children as well as the residential and work address shall not be made public. And number three, all the information that could potentially indicate the location of the witness' place of residence or work shall be redacted from the public record. In order to give effect to the above protective measures during the testimony, the Chamber orders that face and voice distortion technologies will be used in the broadcast of proceedings during the testimony of 2 TCW 865 and orders the media not to publish any photographs or images of 2 TCW 865 regardless of when they were taken, including archival footage or personal details such as his residential address and names of family members. Full written reasons for this decision will follow in due course. And now the floor is given to the International Deputy Co-Prosecutor to resume the questioning of this witness. You may proceed now.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good afternoon, Mr. Witness. We were talking about the procedure used for numbering prisoners when you took photographs. And I want to ask you about a change in the number identifications that were used with the prisoners that we see in the photographs. Mr. President, to do that, I'd like to provide a few pages from the new photograph collection that's been admitted, E394.1. These are pages P01223718 and P01223766. With your leave, may I provide these to the witness?
President, you can proceed now.
Mr. Witness, I'd like to direct your attention in the two pages I've handed you. First, to the woman who appears in photograph 178. And Mr. President, with your leave, if we can show these photographs on the screen, I think we have them ready to display on the screen also.
President, your request is granted.
If you look at the photograph of the woman in 178, you can see that the number tag she's wearing, which appears to be 26 or 28, there's actually two different numbers that have been hung on her in order to get the number of what prisoner she was that day. And I want to compare that to what you see on the next page, which is the photographs we see that are dated in 1978. And if you would look on the next page I handed you, specifically, for example, at photographs 454 and 457, these individuals have full name tags or cards that have their name, their date, and a number on them. My question to you first is, did the procedure for taking photographs change at some point when you began using these more detailed identification cards? And the reason I ask is it must have taken some time to make these cards before the person could be photographed. So could you explain to us how the procedure changed once these more detailed identification cards were used, and who was it that made these cards, these identification tags?
Mr. Co-Prosecutor, I would like to explain you in relation to a woman with the number 226. Back then, we had our own procedure. So the number 2 refers to the time, the sequential number, and as for the procedures which was changed at the later stage, sequential number and also the date were used to be tagged on the photograph so that we have information.
And who created these more detailed tags that had the name, the date, and a number on them? Did your unit do that, or did SUST's unit do that for you?
Answer. no one could make his or her own decision, and the decision could have been made by Duch or Tajan.
Yes, perhaps my question may not have been come out right. Who made the detailed cards? Who is it that made the cards with the name and the dates on them? Who did that?
លោកប្រញ្ញានេះខាងពួកខ្ញុំក្រុមជាង
Actually, the tag was made by the photographers under the order of Duch. That was the facilitation for our photographs procedures.
And if you could look at the two gentlemen, numbers 454 and 457, and if we could show that on the screen, those two male prisoners. My question to you about them, were there prisoners sometimes who arrived who you photographed who appeared to have been beaten? If you look at these two photographs, these gentlemen look in the photograph like they've been beaten in the face. Did you have prisoners who arrived who had been beaten?
That is true. Some photos depicted people who have been beaten and the face was swollen. That is true.
The next subject I wanted to ask you about was children. Were there children who were sent to S21 who your unit photographed?
This is true. Children who had brought into the center were required to take photograph as well. And those children, most of them were related to the senior official in the Democratic Cambodia, and some children were not, their photos were not taken.
I'll come back to the issue of whether there were children who were not photographed. Mr. President, with your leave, I'd like to provide a few more photographs to the witness on this subject to identify them. First, there is a group of photos from the 5,000 that had been previously admitted. These photographs all are E3/8639, and then they bear numbers following that. So the first one that I wish to submit is E3/8639.171, .649, .705, .698, and .1896. Let me repeat that. So these are all E3/8639, .171, .649, .705, .698, and .1896. And also I'd like to submit to the witness a group of 4 photos that's been admitted as E3/8058 that are some mothers with young infants. With your leave, may I provide these to the witness?
President, yes, please.
If you could look at these photographs first, Mr. Witness, and tell us, do you recognize these as photographs, the first group photographs that we're taking of children or teenagers at S21, and the second group, photos of mothers who were taken, mothers who were holding or had young infants with them. And Mr. President, while the witness is reviewing, with your leave, can we display the photographs on the screen?
President, yes, you can.
Mr. Witness, do you recognize these as photos that were taken at S21?
I can recall it. This photo belongs to Yesrun, wife of a secretary in Sector 25.
I wanted to ask you if you could look at the first page of the first mother who's holding a baby. This is E38058. It's picture P000046. It's a mother. She has the prison number 246 tag. My question, first of all, I wanted to confirm, does the number 246 on her, does that mean that she was the 246th prisoner that was photographed that day? Do I understand correctly?
Yes, that is true. The number represents the day that the number of the prisoner who had come into the prison.
And this woman is holding a young baby. Do you know what happened to the babies, the young infants, when the mother would enter S21 and be sent to a prison cell? What happened to the infants?
Mr. President and Mr. Co-Prosecutor, children or infants who had been brought together with the mothers, sometimes 2 or 3 together with the mother, almost of them were killed, and only few survived. Sometimes the mothers and the infants were separated from one another, and the infants were killed.
And my last question about children or infants. When children or infants were brought to S21 with their parents or by themselves, with their parents, were they always photographed and listed? Or how often were children, young infants, photographed and listed in the S21 records?
To my knowledge, none of them listed. None of them was listed. Quite a number of infants and small children were sent into the center. Very few of those children or infants survived, and the rest were killed.
Do you have any approximation of the number of children who were sent to S21, then taken away and killed, who were not photographed or subject to the registration process?
That was unjust and unfair for children. I saw children had been transported into the center by vehicles, and some families were brought in with the entire family. And during the time after they had been detained at the center, they could not escape the killing. Most of them were killed, and some infants, some baby who were still breastfed by the mother were also brought into the center together with the parents.
One of the last subjects I want to ask you about, did the prisoners...
President, please hold on. The International Deputy Co-Prosecutor, you can proceed now.
Yes, Mr. President. I was waiting for the question from the prosecution, how the witness would even know what would happen to the children, because there's a lot of evidence that small children were actually sent to Tresar, S24. He is speculating he couldn't have known it, so I think the prosecution should at least ask the source of his knowledge.
Counsel, why don't you do it when it's your turn?
Because you don't give me enough time.
You'll still have another turn.
Your Honors, I do object to counsel making representations about what the evidence is. I'm not familiar at all with the evidence he's talking about, but I am happy to ask you, how do you know, Mr. Witness, what happened to the young children after they were separated from their parents?
But
It is true that after the young children were separated from the parents, would be sent to be killed. Very few of them survive if they were lucky. The children who were sent to Presa or S24 were killed as well. It is true what happened at the place. It is not my presumption or my guess.
And the question is, how do you know that? Did someone tell you that children were killed? Did one of the guards tell you that? Did you see it yourself? How do you know that the children were killed?
After the young children were separated from the parents, they were transported on vehicles, on truckloads to perhaps Fraser. During the time, there were no daycare centers. And to my guess, they may have been killed because we do not see those children anymore. President, Mr. Witness, you are reminded once again to respond to the limit of the question which has been put to you. Please do not elaborate or expand further on what you were asked. Number two, witness is obliged to tell the truth of what they have known, what they have seen. Witness, ordinary witness who are not expert witness are not obliged to make or draw a conclusion. So whenever you draw a conclusion, it may not have the value of the evidence. So please, Mr. Witness, respond to the limit of the question or to what you have seen and what you have known. Or please mention clearly the sources of your information. If you just answer whatever you want, that may have impacts on your testimony. In addition to that, you cannot use the term injustice or justice. That is the legal term which will be considered by the chamber and will also be evaluated by the chamber and parties. The word that you use, justice or injustice, to you is simple, but it has a very deep meaning within the judicial system. You can now proceed and move on, co-prosecutor in National Deputy Co-Prosecutor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Let me just follow up on, you told council this morning that you went to Presar to take photographs every week. On any of the occasions that you went to Presar, did you see young children there? Did you see any schools or daycare centers where young children were kept on your weekly trips to Presar?
I observed Presar, the place which was in charge by Hui Srai or Hui Field. I went there to take photographs of those who had linked to the former tendency, and I did not see children. I do not know where those children were kept when I visited the S24, which was in charge by Hui Srai or Hui the Field.
Thank you, Mr. Witness. My last area, or second to last, the prisoners you photographed at S21, did they include Vietnamese soldiers? Specifically, did you ever photograph Vietnamese soldiers who were still wearing their military uniforms?
This is also another important fact. When they were fighting back and forth between Cambodian and Vietnamese troops, when Vietnamese soldiers were captured, they would be sent to slay. And indeed, I took photographs of those Vietnamese soldiers. And they were still in their military uniform.
Mr. President, with your leave, I'd like to provide the witness at this time with document E3/8063.3, E3/8063.3, which is a collection of photographs of various people for his identification, with your leave.
Yes, you may do that.
And while the witness is looking at it, if we may display on the screen, Your Honor, I'd like to display picture P00015 from that document, with your leave.
Yes, you can proceed.
Can you look at these photographs, Mr. Witness, and can you tell me whether these are photographs that were taken at S21, and who are the people that are photographed in these pictures?
This is a photograph of a Vietnamese soldier. As I said, there were fighting between Vietnamese and Cambodian troops along the border in An Giang and Ha Tien. And when those Vietnamese soldiers were captured by the Cambodian troops, especially at the Phnom Penh area, they were sent to Slai. And this is one of the photos of those Vietnamese soldiers who have been captured.
Thank you. One last photograph I'd like to ask you about, Mr. Witness, Your Honor, Mr. President. It's, with your leave, I'd like to present to the witness a photograph that appears in E3/2634 at ERN 00658-495. With your leave, may I submit this to the witness?
បាទឲ្យជំរាបអនុញ្ញាត
Yes, you may proceed.
And may we also display this on the screen with your leave, Mr. President?
បាទ
Yes, you can do that.
Mr. Witness, my question is simple. Do you recognize this photograph or any of the people who are in this photograph?
I can recall this photo 100%. That was the day of the marriage ceremony near Duchess house in Tuslai. That is Hui Srai, and his wife is Eun, who was from the sewing unit. Both of them later were killed. This is Hui Srai, who was overall in charge of a pre-saw area. And his wife worked in the textile unit near Tul Tumpung, and I took this photograph.
And is this a photograph of their marriage? Did I understand correctly?
Yes, that is correct.
And who is the person in the background who is standing and appears to be presiding over this event? Do you recognize that person? Or do you remember who it was?
His name is Sri. He's one of the staff working in Tuslai. He was part of the administrative section in Tuslai.
And did he conduct the marriage, or did someone else conduct the marriage of Hui Sray and his wife?
Dutch was the one who organized the wedding. In fact, the Ho and the Hui were arranged to get married by Dutch, and later on there was a dinner reception.
Thank you very much for your time today, Mr. Witness. No further questions, Mr. President.
President, I'd like now to hand the floor to the lead co-lawyers for civil parties to put questions to this witness. You may proceed. Good afternoon, Mr. President, Your Honors. We would like to assign Sam Sukung to put questions to the witness, and I might ask the supplementary questions after that. President, yes, that is granted, and Sam Sukung, you may proceed. Samsukung, good afternoon, Your Honors. Good afternoon, everyone, and good afternoon, Mr. Witness. I have some questions to put to you. First, I'd like to ask you about the S21. Can you tell the chamber who assigned you to work at S21 after you returned from your study in China? Answer. It was His Excellency Son Sen, Minister of National Defense of the DK regime. Secondly, it was Nat who was in charge of the general staff. And third, it was Brother Pin, who was assistant and who was from Division 703. Questioned. During your tenure at S21, can you describe to the chamber the buildings and the various sections within S21? Answer. As for the administrative structure of a tool slaying, I can recall that there were more than 10 groups. The archival group, the interrogation group, which were further divided into 3, and there were typist group, photography group, guard group, and overall security group. So there, as for the archival group, they were also subdivided into various subsections, including those who maintains the list of prisoners. Question. And I'd like to ask you about vehicles. What kinds of vehicles were used to transport people to Tulsley? Answer. During the regime, there were a GMC, a 4x4 American made. However, the vehicles were camouflaged with a cross hospital signed. There were also special vehicles belong to the city messengers group. Everybody was fearful when they saw this special vehicle. And of course, as I said, those vehicles were camouflaged with a hospital sign. And they also, those vehicles were signed with a code from various zones. However, from afar, you could only see the cross sign. It means that they were hospital vehicles. Question. And can you tell the chamber the color of those vehicles and the various makes of those vehicles? Answer. They were in military uniform and they were fully covered. They were all in military uniform, in military color. However, sometimes people were brought in by buses, although that was very rare. And sometimes small vehicles were used to transport those people to the center, for example, from Kampong Sao. Question. When people were transported and arrived at S21, and the people got off the vehicle, what happened to them at that point in time? Answer. I saw sometimes a row of vehicles bringing prisoners in. Some of the prisoners shouted through those cadres that they were traitors, that they served Angka, but Angka arrested them. And for that reason, some of them had their mouth sealed. And they were all handcuffed and blindfolded. Question. In relation to the activity you just described, that is the activity of the prisoners, could you describe the activities of the prison guards toward those prisoners after they got off the vehicle? Answer. I know S21 staff very clearly since they actually went through a fighting training, karate for example. So they were very skillful in these techniques and actually learned their training through various Thai and Japanese movies. And for troubled prisoners, they would exercise those skills against them, in particular those who were in Tahoi's group. And that is what happened, and that's what I saw. And allow me to expand it a bit further. One day, there was a cooperative hut near the corner, and the prisoners somehow shouted after a loudspeaker was played. They were so hopeless after they had been arrested and brought to the center. And in fact, prisoners who were detained inside the compound of S21 were considered medium level. As for the very important prisoners, they were detained outside the compound of S21. Question regarding the delivery of messages. Can you tell the chamber how messages were delivered from S21 and to whom or to where? Answer. On the issue of the delivery of messages, Suthi was the one who maintains the list of incoming and outgoing prisoners, and all documents had to be sent to Dutch, who will decide as who had to be interrogated in a hot method or a cold method. And there was this Hun, who was also from the city messengers group, who sent documents to Pol Pot, and usually when the document returned with a signature in red pen, then those prisoners would be killed later on. And sometimes prisoners were ordered to be taken away by Son Sen. Question. At that time, or during the regime, did you ever take a photograph of a big rally at the stadium in Phnom Penh? Answer. Yes, I took several photos of the big rally, the party's congress, or military meetings. Question. And when you went on an assignment to take photos of the rally, for example, at the stadium in Phnom Penh, can you tell us who were the dignitaries and which subjects or topics they spoke about? Answer. As for the rallies, usually the dignitaries were number 1 Pol Pot, number 2 Nuon Chea, and number 3 Son Sen. However, usually I would see Son Sen as dignitary since he was the Minister of National Defense. As for the content of the speech, usually Pol Pot spoke about maintaining the integrity and territory of Cambodia after we liberated the country from the U.S. imperialists, and that that we should build the country within 15 to 20 years, and that we should defend our country from the east to the west border, and that national security was the major concern. In particular, he focused on S-21 security. Question. This may be my last topic to you. I'd like to ask you about the Tribunal Dam, and you spoke rather at length about that. You said you went to take photos at Tribunal Dam on 3 separate occasions. Can you tell the chamber about those 3 occasions as to when, in what year and month, for example? And the first trip was made in late 76, and I believe it was around December. And the second trip was when I went to make a movie, and that continued from Siem Reap to Tribunal Dam. And the third trip was in mid-1978. That is, at the time, the dam construction had been completed, and some of the photographs were included in the magazines. Question. Thank you, and this may be my last question. When you went to see Tribunal Dam on 3 separate occasions, can you describe to the chamber the condition of the workers there? Answer. I saw activities at the cooperative, and maybe upon seeing us, maybe they considered us as a journalist, so they greeted us, they offered us food and coconut juice, and they dressed rather nicely. Although I believe that this is just a facade. And if from the outset you could see that the activity or the reception was lively, as many dignitaries went to the area, including Son Sen or the district committee. So from the outlook, it was good. But I cannot tell you what went behind the scene, as I myself could not be aware of the situation throughout the country. Council, thank you, Mr. Witness and Mr. President. I conclude my questioning now. Thank you, Mr. President. I have some supplementary questions to put to the witness. And good afternoon, Mr. Witness. My name is Pech Ong. I'm the national co-lawyer, lead co-lawyer for civil parties, together with my counterpart, Mary Giro. We represent the victims. I'd like to ask for some clarifications from you regarding the vehicles, in particular the vehicles that belonged to S-21. You said that sometimes S-21 itself used vehicles to bring in prisoners. Can you describe those vehicles that belonged to S-21, namely the make, the size, and the paint color? Answer. At S-21, I saw the American-made Jeeps. There were 3 of them, and there were about 4 or 5 4x4s, and there were Land Rovers who were used to bring in important prisoners. There were also GMC's vehicles, and they were parked near where the fire station currently is. I can conclude that including the small and the big trucks, there were about 20 of them, and they were meant to be used only for the purpose of S-21. Question. Were those vehicles used frequently to bring in prisoners? Answer. Vehicles were used almost on a daily basis. However, the number of vehicles used varied. Sometimes one or two vehicles were used. The Land Rover, for example, were used at night time. Sometimes other vehicles were used from the Kampong Chhnang airfield. Question. I'd like to move on to another topic. Relation to the medical service at S21. Were there medics to provide treatment at S21, and if so, to whom? Whether to S21 staff as well as to prisoners? Answer. Pao was a medic who provided treatments to both staff and to prisoners. Unfortunately, later on he was killed under the order of Dutch on the accusation that he was a CIA agent. Question. Did the medic have assistance in providing his medical service, for example, in distributing medicine? Answer. At S21, I mainly saw him, Pao, who was killed later on. There were no assistants. There were no assistants to him. However, for S21 staff, if they were sick, they could be sent for treatment at P98. However, at the center itself, there was only medic Pao. Question. So when someone became sick, or a prisoner who was sick, was there anyone who provided medicine or pills to a sick prisoner or a sick patient besides Pao? Answer. As a photographer at the tourist line, there was no treatment at all for prisoners. However, when prisoners were beaten during the interrogation and they were not yet dead, usually Pao would treat them. Generally, there was no treatment for prisoners at all. But thank you for your clarification. And I have another topic that I'd like to get clarification from you, and this was asked by the Deputy Co-Prosecutor. That is in relation to the marriage. The Deputy Co-Prosecutor showed you a photo of the marriage of Hui Srai, and in your book that you distributed this morning at page 32, there was kind of a reception, and it could be the wedding for the newly wed husbands and wives. Can you tell the chamber whether you are referring to the same marriage, or this is a separate occasion? Answer. This wedding dinner reception was held at the Dutch house, that is that is after Hui Srai got married. And Song and I actually took a photograph of this reception. Question. Do you know those newlywed husbands and wives? Answer. I know the wife clearly. She was Kuhn from the military. She was a former military commander. Later on, she was sent to the textile unit in Tul Tumpung, and later on, she was arranged to marry Huisrai. As for others, I was not that familiar with. Question. As for the couple that you knew, can you tell the chamber whether they had known each other before their wedding? Answer. Yes, they did. Because Kuhn was a female military commander from Regiment 103, and Hoi himself was also a military commander, though I did not know his military unit. And later on, they were accused of an offense and killed. Question regarding Hoi Srais and his wife and other newlywed couples. And you said that their wedding was organized by Onka. Can you tell the chamber, from your knowledge, whether they volunteered to marry their partners? Answer. I met Kuhn at the textile unit 75. She was not happy with the arrangement, but she had no choice because it was organized by Onka. It was a forced marriage, and of course, you are aware of that. Nobody could make any objection to the arrangement by Onka. President, witness, you are reminded once again only to tell the truth and not to make any speculation or a personal conclusion. When you make a personal conclusion, that is a speculation, and that cannot be done by you as a witness. If you knew that she's from Division 103 for sure, then you can say so. But you cannot speculate that she was from Division 103 and that Hui was a military commander and maybe from Division 103, so they knew each other. No, you cannot make such a speculation. Likewise, for your last response, you should not make your personal conclusion or speculation. That is for the purpose of seeking the truth in this case. Second, your testimony would be used in a comparison with other testimonies of other witnesses in order to see the consistency or the discrepancies. And you should also be well aware of that, as other testimonies from other witnesses actually have been used to put to you for your reaction. And if you knew that it's a forced marriage, you should have a solid ground for that before you said that it was a forced marriage, rather than to draw such a conclusion from you yourself. So please don't make a guess or a speculation.
បាទលោកសាក់សី
Mr. Witness, you stated that you met Kuhn, and Kuhn said that she was not happy with the marriage. Is that true, what you said? Answer. That is true, what I said. the distance from those line to the clothes-making unit was close, so I was on a vehicle past the Chinese embassy to that location. While I was taking the photo, she lowered her head and she was not happy to my observation. Actually, she became a part of the clothes-making unit in 1976, and during the marriage there were around 40 couples, and Ho, the deputy of Tuas Line prison, was also there, and his wife was also part of the clothes-making unit. Question: do you know other newlyweds at that time who may have known each other before the marriage? President, please hold on and observe the microphone, Mr. Witness. Witness, let me tell you, I know only two couples, the couple of Hoi Srai and the couple of Hui at the prison. And at the time, some were from the clothes-making units, and as I said, I know Kun and the people I described. Lawyer, thank you. Regarding the second couple, you have just made a mention, that is the couple of the deputy at Tuas Line prison. Did that couple love each other before the marriage, and they agreed? Did they agree to get married voluntarily? Answer: to my observation, the marriage at Tuas Line was not forced. Angka organized the marriage for them. Whether or not they consented, they voiced their consent to the marriage, I have no idea, but Angka required them to get married. Question: do you happen to know that there was a case that the couple which was required to get married by Angka refused the marriage? Answer: no, no such thing happened. No refusal from those couples. Angka organized the marriage, and the adults at Tuas Line prison, perhaps 30 or 40 couples got married at the prison. President, you are running out of time now, and it is now appropriate time for a short break. The court will take a short break from now until 3 p.m. Court officer, please assist the witness during the break time in the waiting room, and please invite him back into the courtroom at 3 p.m. The court is now in recess.